looking to dramatically enhance the quality of your travel photos, whether you are shooting landscapes, portraits, or even street photography, filters are a game changer. I've been using filters for the past 12 years, typically on 4 different occasions. Today, let me share my practical advice on why you may want to use filters on these occasions, and what types of filters to use and how to use them. Stay for the bonus tip on what types of filters that might be popular but not worth your investment. In case we haven't met, hi, my name is Belinda. I help photo enthusiasts like you take better travel photos and create dream memories. And these are some of the filters I have. Don't worry, we're going to talk more about these in much more details. See, they have different shapes, different sizes. These are for small cameras. These are for drones. Variable filters, a whole stack of different types of filters, more. So let's get started. First and foremost, why do you need filters? Filters are like sunglasses for your lenses. They allow you to use wide aperture in bright light, prevent overexposure, and allow you to do long exposure. Let's talk about the scenario 1. When you photograph people in strong sunlight, for example, on the beach or in the snow, it can be challenging to achieve a shallow depth of field or blurred background because the camera's exposure settings might require a small aperture to prevent overexposure. To be more specific, in strong light conditions, when using wide aperture, your camera needs to use fast shutter speed to offset the amount of light coming into your camera in order to give you a proper exposure. However, most mirrorless or DSLR cameras have the fastest shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second. Sometimes you may find yourself in a situation not being able to click shutter. This is because the camera is maxing out at its fastest shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, but it will still blow out your image. Your only solution without a filter is to dial down your aperture, but this widens the depth of field and reduces your chance to separate your people, subject from foreground or background, and giving you this blurry background or foreground creamy effect. This is when an ND filter comes in handy to solve the problem. It darkens the light and allows the camera to use slower shutter speeds at wide aperture. ND filters come in various stops. For example, 3 stops, 6 stops, 10 stops. The larger the stop number, the more light it will block and the wider aperture you can use. But if you travel and move around from place to place, it will be inconvenient to change filters whenever your light conditions change. Instead of swapping ND filters with different strengths in different light conditions, a variable ND filter is definitely much more convenient. When I travel in the summer, my NiSi 1 to 5 stop variable ND filters are almost on my lens all the time. I wanted to photograph my kids or do street photography with wide apertures such as f2.8 whenever I want, instead of being forced to close down my aperture due to the shutter speed problem. With the variable ND filter, I can easily adjust my filter strengths from 1 stop to 5 stop by simply rotating the filter instead of swapping solid ND filters with different strength levels. So if you often travel in the summer, go to the beach, or maybe in the winter, traveling to snow mountains, and you would like to photograph your family and friends in wide aperture, consider using an ND filter. Ideally, a variable 1 to 5 stop ND filter. By the way, this video is not sponsored by anyone, and I paid for all these filters over the years myself, and nobody is gifting me any of these filters. I just wanted to pass my knowledge to you. I also use the 1 to 5 stop variable ND filters to photograph waterfalls quite often. For more details about how to photograph waterfalls, you can check out this video. I'll also leave you a link below. Now, scenario number 2. If you do video shooting, it's even more important to use ND filters. For cinematic videos, you have to use a relatively slow shutter speed to achieve the cinematic effect. For example, for videos at 24 frames per second in the US or 25 frames per second in Europe or Asia, you want to use 1/2 your frame rate as your shutter speed. In this case, 1/50th of a second is your shutter speed. This might work in low light conditions, but in outdoor scenarios during daytime, you easily blow out your footages. Therefore, if you often create travel videos in bright light, no matter using a mirrorless camera, a drone, or vlog cameras, using an ND filter is a must. Although I find 1 to 5 stop variable ND filter is pretty sufficient for photography, stronger stop ND filters from 6 to 10 stop might be more needed for videography, especially in strong lights. I have 2 breakthrough 6 stop solid ND filters and several 10 stop ND filters for different lenses. Even these filters are more appropriate for my video scenarios. I still find myself using the 1 to 5 stop variable ND filters more often due to their convenience. More importantly, I don't have to switch filters back and forth between photos and videos. Now for drones and vlogging cameras such as this DJI Osmo Pocket 3, since these cameras are very delicate, I'd suggest using solid ND filters instead of variable ND filters. In fact, I typically stick to one filter for as long as I can. ND16, which is 4 stops, is my most used ones for my DJI Osmo Pocket 3. ND32 is my most used ones on my drones. Of course, these are just for your reference. If you typically create videos in tropical islands, you may want to use stronger ND filters for your drone and vlogging cameras. Scenario number 3, long exposure for landscape. Another filter I use very often is the 10 stop ND filter. In fact, this is my most invested ND filters. I've tried different brands and different types of 10 stop filters over the past 12 years and can explain more detail in later part of this video how to choose the right one. I use the 10 stop ND filter almost exclusively for long exposure in landscape photography, capturing motion blur in scenes with moving elements such as ocean waves, rivers, clouds, or sometimes waterfalls as well. With exposure time of 30 seconds, 1 minute, or even longer, you can create dreamlike effect for ocean waves or river flows, the silky smooth surface for lakes, and the stretchy movement for clouds during sunrise, sunset. Such effects look surreal and give people a sense of peace. These effects cannot be achieved with a normal exposure without using a 10 stop filter. 10 stop filter also allows you to create long exposure during the daytime. Without it, you're stuck with fast shutter speed for subjects that will look so much better in slower shutter speed, such as waterfalls. Scenario number 4 is darkening the sky. When we photograph landscape during golden hours, after sunrise and before sunset, due to the uneven light, typically too bright in the sky and too dark on the ground, you are more likely get part of your image overexposed or underexposed. This is when a graduated ND filter is very useful. It is similar to ND filters, but with a gradient effect, where one side is darker and gradually transition to clear. This is the Lee graduated ND filters that I bought 12 years ago. They were in fact my first ever filter purchase. The filter pack came with 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stop filters. Depending on how much you want to darken the sky, you can use one filter or several filters that stack on top of each other. Back then, I used the Canon 5D Mark III, which is a full-frame DSLR camera. I found the graduated ND filters extremely useful. However, ever since I switched to mirrorless cameras, both my Sony and Canon cameras have wider dynamic range than my DSLR. I found myself less and less in need of graduated ND filters. In fact, the graduated ND filters are never a must. You have 2 different workarounds to solve the sky-ground contrasty light problems. Solution 1 is to do exposure bracketing, taking 3 to 5 shots, exposing your photos from the lightest to the darkest part, and stack them together in Adobe Lightroom during post-processing. Now, solution 2 is to darken the sky in retouch software such as Adobe Lightroom, my favorite and most used photo software. It is almost exactly the same as using a real filter. In the old days, like 10 years ago, you can darken the sky with a linear filter in Adobe Lightroom. In recent years, with more sophisticated AI features, you can easily select the sky and make local adjustments faster and better. However, the quality of your retouch largely depends on the quality of your exposure from the camera. Particularly, you don't want to overexpose the sky, which means loss of data in your photo. And no matter how good your retouch skills are, you can not retrieve colors or textures from the lost data. So a digital filter to darken the sky may not always work unless you expose the picture correctly from the camera at the start. In summary, if you have a quality full frame camera, doesn't matter mirrorless or DSLR, you probably don't need a graduated ND filter. Even if you use a crop sensor camera, you can still use exposure bracketing to stack your images in post-processing. Last month, we had a bizarre car accident when my camera bag slipped out of the trunk before my husband backed up the car in our road trip. My entire f-stop camera backpack went under the wheel of a 7-seater SUV. Surprisingly, most of my camera gear survived, but my graduated ND filter got warped. I don't know if you can see it. So it's possible I'll grab them even less in the future. Now, here are the bonus tips. What kind of filters you might not want. Okay, first one, UV filters. UV filters are used to protect lenses. I used to have UV filters for all my lenses, but find them in the way when I had to install other filters. In fact, one of them was permanently stuck to a 10-stop filter in my first Iceland trip over 10 years ago. Even the professional camera repair shop couldn't separate them. So be careful when you stack two circular filters together. Therefore, I no longer use UV filters. The second filter you might not need is the polarizing filter, which is also called CPL, circular polarizer. It reduces glare and reflections from water and glass surfaces, enhances contrast and colors, particularly in the sky. However, when using wide-angle lenses, polarizing filters can sometimes create uneven polarizing, resulting in an inconsistent sky tone or bending across the frame, because the polarizing effect is strongest at a 90-degree angle to the sun. But you cannot always take pictures at a 90-degree angle to the sun, right? I shoot all my photos in RAW and can easily enhance colors and contrast in post-processing in Adobe Lightroom or other photo softwares. But with the uneven bending in the blue sky, it actually takes me more time to fix the problem. So in terms of water surface, I rarely photograph lakes, ocean, or landscape during bright daylight. So the glare reduction is not a common problem in my landscape photos. In addition, polarizing filters can reduce the amount of light entering into your lens by somewhat like 1.5 to 2 stops. This means it will affect your shutter speed. Given all the above reasons, I find more trouble than benefit from using a circular polarizer, so I stopped using it. In summary, out of the major 5 types of filters, namely ND filters, variable ND filters, graduated ND filters, UV filters, and polarizing filters, if I had to recommend the must-have filters for you, no matter if you're a beginner or professional, a variable 1 to 5 stop ND filter and a 10 stop ND filter would be the best investment. Personally, I get so much use out of these 2 types of filters and have gradually transitioned out of using other filters. Okay, now we understand when to use filters, what types of filters to use. It's important to note that not all filters are created equal. Just like your lens choices, we are dealing with glasses here. A lens filter could make or break a photo. So you need to be careful. The top criteria you need to double check or triple check before buying a filter is the color cast. Filters are meant to enhance your photos, not to destroy your photos. If a filter gives you unwanted color cast, or even worse, uneven light banding, vignetting, no matter in the middle or corner of your photo, you are essentially getting more trouble than benefit. For ND filters, the most common problem is color shift or color cast. The higher f-stop or the more darkening effect of a filter, the more prominent this problem is. For example, the Lee 10-stop filter I have owned over 10 years has a strong blue color cast on all my long exposure photos. I've bought 10-stop filters from other brands. Lots of them are even worse. Although I could use white balance to color correct it in post-processing, it is kind of annoying, especially when you take a first look at the camera LCD screen after your photo click. All you see is a block of blue colors. I had to imagine the final result of my photo. As I mentioned before, we had a bizarre car accident last month. My Lee 10-stop filter got crushed. Ironically, it kind of was a relief for me. I finally moved on from it and got a NiSi 10-stop filter, which I wish I got a lot earlier. Out of all the 10-stop filters I've invested and tried over the years, there are two brands I have used so far that have outperformed others and have the least amount of color cast. One is NiSi, one is Breakthrough. Alright, the second thing you need to decide is a filter type. Filter type will determine how convenient to install and uninstall your filters onto your lens. This ultimately would decide how often you will use the filters. For mirrorless or DSLR cameras, circle filters and square or rectangle filters are two most common types. The circle filters can be screwed directly on the lenses, while the square or rectangle filters have to be inserted into mounting brackets that are installed onto the lens. The former takes one step and the latter takes 3 steps to mount. Overall, I'll still recommend circular filters, just don't stack them if you don't have to. For drones and vlog cameras, you may want to use magnet filters. I particularly like this MINGVEN filter over other brands because the Osmo Pocket 3 can still close with the filter on, whereas filters from other brands will get in the way and have to be taken off before you close the camera. However, the magnet was very strong, and to a certain extent, I find it hard to take it off. I had to hold the camera head and force the gimbal in place to get the filter off. This is also why I mentioned earlier, I don't change filters very often on this vlogging camera. Same situation to the DJI drone. You keep the filter on the drone lens without taking it on and off all the time, because they are just way too sensitive. Now, recently I have tried press-on filters for my mirrorless cameras, but don't think they are secure enough in high wind conditions. They could be at risk of falling off the lens. The third important consideration before buying a filter is the filter size, especially when you get a screw-on filter. Find out your lens thread diameter and get the filter with the same size. One way to save money is to get the filter for the largest lens you have. For example, 2 of my Canon lenses are 82 millimeters in diameter. Instead of buying the same filter for my 77 millimeter lens, I could get a step-up ring and mount the 82 millimeter filter onto the 77 millimeter lens. Notice you cannot do the other way around to mount a small filter onto a big lens. If you do that, you are essentially blocking the 4 corners of your photo. If you use square or rectangle filters, since their short side is 100 millimeters and most lenses are 49 to 82 millimeters in diameter, you have no problem using the same square or rectangle filter for all your lenses. All you need to do is to get the right size for the mounting adapters or brackets. And there you go! Filters are an essential tool for creative photography and landscape, everyday travel, for candid street photography, as well as videos. Whether you're just starting out or are seasoned pro, using filters effectively can help you capture stunning images right in your camera. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more photography tips, and let me know in a comment which filters you're excited to try out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.